Hey everybody, it's Mr. Barron here to talk to you a little bit about how psychology can make us better learners, to take us from where we are to where we want to be. And I have collected some of my favorite concepts in psychology to help you do that. All right, so first concept, goal setting. And each of these concepts has a lot of research behind it. The first one is goal setting, and the idea is set some goals to keep yourself motivated. There's been some research done, first early research done on employees, some of whom in the experiment got goals, some didn't, and they were given different kinds of goals. And what the research found was that employees who had clear goals where they understood those goals to be important and the goals to be challenging were the ones that were most successful. So we have clear goals being important, important goals. You have to feel like this is an important goal to you and that it should be challenging. And you see over here, there's this quote from Michael Phelps, who for some reason is rock climbing. Maybe because that's harder than swimming. He says, I think goals should never be easy. They should force you to work, even if they are uncomfortable at the time. And then some more recent research found students with clear goals who wrote them down and told friends did best in classes and also later when they went into the workforce. So writing it down is important. And they have to tell, said the way they told friends they did better. To me, that maybe says something about accountability that, if there are other people to hold you to your goals, you're more likely to achieve them. All right, so how are we going to apply this concept of goal setting? Well, we should follow the psychology research here, and there are certain kinds of goals that are better than others. And one that has gotten a lot of popularity, and there's definitely some research to support this, is the idea of a SMART goal. SMART is an acronym here, uh, which stands for specific, so don't have vague goals, make them exact. Measurable, so that you can identify whether you have gotten there or not. Achievable, so is it a goal that you actually are going to achieve? Is it realistic? Have you assessed the things around you to know? And time bound, make sure that it has an end point behind it. And you should have big goals, but also have small goals, so goals with inside goals. So for example, you're studying, the goal might be to read chapter 1, but maybe it's long. Give yourself a break so that the first goal might be to read 2 pages, and then you're giving yourself a break, and this supports other psychology research and learning with a snack. You can get up, walk around, and then maybe it's 3 pages, and then a game, and then finish chapter. And then maybe it's ice cream or sleep or whatever it is that you want, but have something that you're looking forward to as you're doing the work. All right, follow me on this one. This one I think is one of the most interesting ones and one that I wish I'd come to much earlier in my life, but it's called distributed practice. So the idea of distributed practice starts with another concept, which is called the forgetting curve. So-called forgetting curve. It was done by research and a psychologist named Ebbinghaus, which is not all that important, but look at how this graph works. These are the number of days, and this is the amount of information remembered. So if you learn it on day 0, the first time you learn it, you know 100%. But what happens after day 1? You've lost 20%. By the third day, you have lost 60%. This is on average. Of course, it depends how much the information is important to you, what kind of information, etc. But it's a pretty steep curve. And if you review the information, obviously you'll be back up to 100% again, but then you'll start to forget it. So you review it again, and you start to forget it. But now look at this curve. The curve is less steep each time. And the more often you can review these things, the better, until eventually, hopefully, that curve maybe even just goes flat. And now that means you've got it forever if the curve is flat. And that takes several repetitions before you get there. But most people do what's called mass practice or all at once. Now you can see what the problem with that is. You've forgotten, you learn the information, you start to forget it. Now if you wait, especially until day 7, you might be down to like only remembering like 10% of it. And what happens? You get up to 100%, but that curve, it'll drop off right away. And it might be that even in the 5 minutes before the test comes, you've forgotten it. So you gotta avoid this when you can, and try to spread your learning out. Some more research, just real quick. Keppel here did this thing where he had people learn these nonsense words, and after one day here of having learned them, people remembered 5.9 out of like a dozen words, so they could remember about half of them. But when they did mass practice, so they got a chance to practice a week later, they could only remember 2. But you look at the people who did distributed practice, they remembered about the same thing after a day. But after a week, the people who did distributed practice remembered more than twice as much. So that's a huge difference. They did not study more, they just studied in a spread out way. So how can you use this? Should be obvious. Don't study more, study smarter, which means spread out, study a little bit, but do it frequently. So look for times for what I call micro studying. Maybe just 1 minute, maybe 5 minutes. Nothing too intimidating. Hopefully you can make it fun and just enough that, okay, I got that, I'm moving on. Maybe it's enough time like to play a quick silly phone game, except instead you're doing a quick little review. And when you rehearse, that's the word psychologists use for practicing, you should try to do it in some unconventional ways. Well, what do I mean by that? When I'm talking about unconventional ways, I'm talking about doing things like maybe drawing, or maybe a big one that I think is helpful is tell someone about something that you learned. It's a great check on your knowledge. It could be a parent, a friend, could even be your dog, doesn't matter. It might be that you use flashcards. That's a little bit more conventional, but you're going for something. And think about it when you're trying to do something like I like to run. Distributed practice. You're not going to prepare for a big race by doing it one time. You're going to train several days a week in order to get stronger. So sports coaching has learned from this concept of distributed practice that you have to spread it out. Now here's a big one you probably already know about, but I'll just point out some of the research in psychology: multitasking. So there's a lot of research, but one interesting one is one that it focuses on the brain, where they look at the brain under multitasking. And one of the things they find is that true multitasking is actually a myth. We don't actually multitask. We switch between tasks and reset after each switch. So it might be quick, but the idea is we're switching all the time. Here, that, there, that. So it's going back and forth, back and forth. Now, it might happen so fast that you feel like you're doing 2 things at once. But if you look at what's happening in the brain, it's actually not simultaneous. And check this little quote out here. In experiments published in 2001, Joshua Rubenstein, PhD, Jeffrey Evans, PhD, and David Meyer, PhD, conducted 4 experiments in which young adults switched between different tasks, such as solving math problems or classifying geometric objects. For all tasks, the participants lost time when they had to switch from one task to another. As tasks got more complex, participants lost more time. So some of you might even have recognized this name here, might have been familiar to you. So several experiments, so they switched to different tasks and they lost time when they had to switch time, especially if the task got a little bit more complex. So what does that mean for you? Try not to do it as much as possible. Where you can, go with either the phone or reading, listening or playing a game. So that means giving yourself a break. You'll do better at music if you are just listening to it. You'll remember more of the lyrics, make more sense out of it, and enjoy it more if you're doing that than if you're studying. And I know a lot of people think they study better when they're listening to music, but you're not listening to music as well, and you're certainly not able to focus as much on studying, especially if there are lyrics in the music. It will distract you. Give yourself time breaks when you need them. So I know people like music, I do too. Give yourself that break to get, to listen, little brain break, and you can make them frequent, but give yourself breaks and focus when you're doing it. Find ways to limit distractions. So depending on where you are, that might mean people distractions, that might just mean noise distractions, that might even mean like temperature or other things that might be distracting, visual distractions. If you can limit those, you'll be able to focus better. And practicing mindfulness or meditation can be another way to help make sure you are in the moment, present, and not thinking about the past or the future, but focused on where you are and what you're doing right at the time. That's part one. Try them out, see how they work, and then check out part two when you get a chance. Take care.